And welcome back, everyone. This is me, your watercolor wizard, and today I'm so excited to share with you this beautiful watercolor tutorial. So I know it has been a minute that you guys have seen my face. Today is a little bit warmer here in South Africa, and as you can hear the soft buzzing in the background, that's the heater running. So my studio is south facing and it never gets direct sunlight, which is great in the summer, but in the winter this is literally a cold room. I could hang up meat in here and it won't spoil. So anyway, it's not always very comfortable to show up on camera having to be dressed like an Oros man, meaning I've put every layer that I own on my body and I'm still not warm. So on those very cold extreme days, especially painting every day during maybe early morning hours or later in the evening, it's just too cold to sound like a human being, first and foremost, and to look like your watercolor wizard on camera. So that is why I really also enjoy watercolor month in July, simply because we can focus on the watercolor and the process and the magic of that rather than looking at your watercolor wizard's beautiful face, right? However that is perceived, today I thought I wanted to share with you patrons a little bit more. Now, again, with the watercolor magic, what I really enjoy is the building up of layers. And I think today's prompt was just the right one for me to add a tutorial for you guys, because this is really beginner friendly. It's easy to draw and it's easy to paint, and I'm going to show you step by step how to do that. So for today's reference, you can just check out the link in this video. It will take you to my Pinterest board, because I found this beautiful image. It does not belong to me, but we are going to be using it for this exercise. Now the prompt for today is dusty, and I thought hard and long about what we could paint that could represent dust or dustiness, and then I thought, let's just see what comes up when we put in the word dusty. So I think it sort of played more on the idea of dusty pink than necessarily something dusty. But this scene actually fits the description beautifully. I don't know where it is, I don't know what it's about, but this is a beautiful, I'm going to call it a window in this old wall, and there's a beautiful vine of something growing next to this window, and it's the plaster is coming apart here at the bottom, so you see the stonework and the brickwork. It's just a lovely scene. So as far as painting is concerned, all you really need, and this is what I've done in my reference here, is I've just added this window, and I've added a lot more detail than is necessary. You don't have to add that much detail. You can literally just go for the opening and sort of hit a plank in there and give it a bit of a shelf. So how detailed you're going to make your painting is going to be totally up to you. But I want you to focus and play more with this beautiful plaster work and all of these beautiful nuances. Now we have a variety of colors working here. We've got a very soft, sort of all peachy, dusty pink that's very light. And for these areas, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab my trusty little wax crayon. I just enjoy it when I do a quick watercolor painting and I see areas in my painting that has a definite highlight to it, and I want to make sure that I can preserve some of that. So we have a little bit of a scruffy highlight bit here, so I'm very lightly just going to scruff over my page and just make sure that I can retain some of those highlights. Nothing major, not too hard. It's just going to be a little bit of a waxy layer there, so that when we start with our washes, there's a little bit of resist there. Now the colors that I think I'm going to be using in my palette for this World Watercolor Month 2025, I've been painting with my core introductory set of 12 colors. Now these 12 colors are very primary based, and I promise you, if you've got these colors, you will be able to paint anything, because you can mix all of the colors you need, both warm and cool. So I really do like this set. It's a great way to start. 12 essential colors, and you'll be able to mix anything with it. Now, one of my viewers did mention that she also loves core watercolor. In fact, she only paints with core watercolor, and what a blessing, because this is a beautiful, beautiful pigment. And she said, how do you survive without the darks in violet or purple, because that's her favorite color. Now, I must admit, it's one of my favorite colors too. There's a number of colors on this color scheme here that is missing for me. Number one, my absolute favorite is the turquoise, the cobalt turquoise. And then the darks is in violet. But you know, with quinacridone magenta, and actually with any of these reds, but specifically quinacridone magenta and phthalo blue gives the most beautiful, beautiful violet. So it's not like I'm lacking in mixing beautiful violets, but I do understand what you were saying. So just check that out. So we will definitely be using, I'm going to start here. We will need a little bit of yellow for the green, and I'm thinking of this nickel azo yellow. We might need a bit of ochre to mute things down. I did enlighten my quinacridone gold deep, but we might not use a lot of it. I might add all of these yellows to the greens, and the green sort of aspect in this plant is what we're going to be needing our phthalo green for, and we'll be adding our yellows and blues to that. We will definitely be needing our pyrrole red light, permanent alizarin crimson, and our quinacridone magenta, because the majority of this scene sort of ranges in the reds and the pinks, and we will need that. And then also Payne's grey to mix a little bit of shadow and depth, and we've got a lot of greys down here. I also have my burnt sienna on standby. So we will need all of these colors for this painting, and so go ahead, and I taped off like an A5 size on my watercolor paper. This is 300 gram watercolor paper. It's not cotton, it's just paper, but it is a beautiful 300 GSM watercolor paper that I do enjoy. So now that you know which colors I will be using, I did drew a light sketch of this sort of layout, just so that I have a basic idea of where what is placed. And what I can sort of suggest that you guys look at is this sort of crack in the plaster at the bottom, where we will definitely be seeing some rocks and stones of the wall. Just a basic layout of this branch of this plant, and where the branches will be coming over. Obviously the opening, which is the window, and yeah, I just sort of gave myself a basic vibe. That's the most important details that you need to sort of capture in your reference drawing before we start painting. Now, I did share this with you guys in a previous video, but in case you missed it, if drawing is not your thing, and I totally get that, and this is the fun part about watercolor, is that you can print out your reference material on the size that you want. You can then, if you're going to paint it A5 like me, then print it A5 at your local printing store, and bring that home. And then what you do is you can take a carbon stick or just your pencil, scratch on the whole surface. You will do that on the back of your print. And once you've got a good layer of carbon there, then you can place your paper on your watercolor paper, stick it down, and just use a pencil to do the outlines of this, and it will transfer to your watercolor paper so that you have an exact sort of copy of your reference material, which can then serve almost like a coloring book. Now you know where what will be positioned in your painting, and then you can go ahead and start this beautiful painting journey. So I'm going to disappear off your screen. So I think what I'm going to use for this painting is I'm going to play with my quill brush. It's just one of those brushes that I can do almost anything with in the painting. And I've got some clean water. Now I've got some colors in my mixing well from a painting yesterday. So I'm just going to start with whatever is here. I think this is a little bit of alizarin crimson that's in this wash. I'm going to add a little bit of magenta to it. And I think we need to add a lot of water. So this is the first wash. You want to mix enough color in your little mixing well to cover the entire sort of painting. I'm going to go around the gray sort of part of this window, but let's get into it. Now you're going to see sort of the resist of the wax showing up and giving me just a beautiful texture here. Beautiful. Just a nice soft pink background to begin to build up the layers. Now what I like about building up of the layers in watercolor, remember this is an transparent medium, and your colors is going to dry a little bit lighter than what you are painting right now. I'm going to leave the bottom out as well because that's mostly gray. Right, so that is sort of our first wash, which is now wetting the paper for us. So now we're going to go ahead and mix something a little bit warmer. I'm going to bring in a bit of this pyrrole red. Now this pyrrole red is very warm, but I do see some warmth around the window here. And while we have paper wet, we're going to drop this in, and it's going to give us a beautiful diffused kind of vibe. And we're going to increase the intensity of the wash as we go. Beautiful. Lots of warmth down here, all the way to the other side. It almost feels like a rose quartz crystal vibe going here. I'm gonna warm up in between where these branches are going to be as well. Just dropping in color and allowing it to bleed into our wash. Focusing on areas where this will be a little bit more intense. That feels nice. I think I'm gonna bring in a little bit of alizarin crimson. It's a cooler red, but it's also quite intense. And I need to cool it down more, so I'm going to add magenta to it. Now there is something in my paint that I'm trying to get rid of. There we go. I think I'm going to add a little bit of ultramarine blue That was maybe too much, but I need it to be a little bit deeper down here especially. A little bit more of a violety, pinky kind of vibe. Nice. Let's add some of it down here as a shadow underneath that ledge, and here at the top of this window there's also a little bit of that color. And remember, you're interpreting a photograph, you are not copying it. So if your painting starts to go in another direction, or you introduce a different color to what you see, or it turns out to look a little bit different, it's okay. It's okay. It's your painting. Own it. Make it yours. I'm just gonna use a dry kitchen towel. I just want to lift up the excess water here on the side. Sometimes if I do a very wet into wet, it can seep under the tape, especially if you don't use a very expensive or very sticky tape. Nice. Okay. I'm gonna have to wait for this to dry before I can paint in my window or begin to do the stonework, simply because I don't want it to bleed into this beautiful background wash. I am going to just picked up the wrong brush there. I think I'm going to come in and add a little bit more of the Pyro Red for help if there's water on my brush. And I'm just going to dance on the toe of my brush here. And it's all still very damp, so it is going to bleed. But look at these beautiful veins that I'm able to create by just dropping in a bit of a deeper, concentrated version of this and just playing with it over this wet background. Now this part of the wall is a little bit more intense in color. Love that. Here next to this window, adding contrast while I can. Gorgeous. Love it. I'm not worried about the green. Green is quite potent, so I think it will be fine painting it over the pink. And that is still fairly light, and the green can be quite intense and deep. Oh, that feels a little bit better to me. Trying to draw a straight line in watercolor can sometimes be challenging, eh? Maybe a bit more here. And I think we're coming to a stage in the painting where we're going to have to leave this alone to dry. Gorgeous. I love the texture. I love the vibe. I am going to maybe add some salt. It might be a bit light, but maybe it can help us here where the leaves are going to be. I think I'm adding the salt a bit light in the game, but it's still damp, so let's see. Maybe it will add to the drama. Okay, so let's let this dry, and when we come back, let's just blend this a little bit. Then we will paint in the window and the stonework, and we'll finish with the plants. So I'll see you guys now. Alright everyone, this layer is dry. So let's go ahead and wipe off the salt. Now yeah, it was a little bit too late for the salt to really have an effect. But you know what? All art is experimental. It's not the end of the world if something that you tried didn't work. Let's have a sip of tea. Alrighty then. So now let's get into this little window door. And I'm going to basically play with my burnt sienna. And I'm going to cool it down with a little bit of ultramarine. Here we go. And I'm basically going to give everything except this plank at the bottom a little bit of a wash in this color. Starting off light. So this is one of those paintings where you'll maybe want to have a hairdryer nearby, because we don't have a lot of areas to jump to. Right, so I'm going to let that dry, and I'm going to skip down to the foundation, which is a little bit more similar to the grey that we're going to use here. So I'm going to use my Payne's grey. I didn't even rinse my brush. I've used the brown that is on there. Let's add a bit of Payne's grey. And I think a little bit of ultramarine blue to cool things down. Now, if you don't know what your color looks like, just take your kitchen towel or another piece of watercolor paper and just lay down some of the color so that you can basically see, is it the color you're looking for? Is it intense enough? All of those things. So I do like this color, very earthy, and I'm just going to go ahead and put in a beautiful foundational wash here. Beautiful. Now there's actual blue stones in there as well. Well, bluish. Not a lot here and there. So while it's wet, I'm going to go ahead and just draw in some of these stone areas without saying too much. And I'm going to start to just bring in a little bit of a shadow underneath this plaster. Nice. I think that top color is dry enough, so I'm going to use the same grey on this blank. I think it's a bit of a grey wood or something. Ash wood, I don't know. I don't know wood that well, but it's very grey. And then this is actually part of the wall. I'm going to go ahead and bring in this grey carefully in this area as well. There we go. I like that. Right, we're going to have to let that dry. So while we've got this grey on our brush, let's go ahead and paint in this tree trunk, vine branch, whatever you call it. That's basically where we're going to see that it's not overcomplicate things. Okay, we let that dry. I'm going to rinse off and I'm going to mix some colors for this door, which is also a little bit more in the maroon kind of family. So I'm going to use this darker mixture that we had here, almost this violety color. I'm going to add some alizarin crimson to it. And I'm going to add some burnt sienna to it. That feels good. Maybe a little bit of Payne's Grey. That feels good. So let's see what this looks like on white paper. That feels about good. It's almost like an eggplant kind of vibe. I'm going to add a dash of ultramarine blue to it still. Remember that blue and red gives you a violet. There we go, like that. Okay, so now we're going to paint everything on this door except this bottom part of the wood and the center. It's lighter. We're going to have to do 2 coats. Okay, so let's build up intensity. I'm going to go ahead and wash this entire door, window, with this color, except for that side. And there's a little bit of that there. Bring this down in a beautiful wash. Like so. Oh, stop quivering, Gideon. There we go. And I'm going to just define the line here at the bottom. And I'm going to just dance with a brush on the toe to talk a little bit about this texture of the paint peeling. So there's a lot of character that can be very forgiving and graceful in this painting, right? That feels nice. Let's let that dry. Rinsing out, I'm going to bring in a little bit more Payne's Grey into this grey mixture of mine, making it a bit stronger. And let's begin to paint in some of these rocks and shadows. Let's make that a little bit more intense. under the plaster. I'm not gonna try and paint every detail, but I do want to mention some of this linearity. Linearity. Is that even a word, Gideon? The linear aspects of this, what should we call it, stonework. With a little bit of a shadow, deeper shadow right underneath. Nice. We're going to just build this up in layers. That's what we're going to do. I'll let that dry. Let's talk a little bit about the wood grain, and this is also a little bit deeper. The front facing bit of this shelf. Here we go. Let's begin to talk about a bit about that. Right, I think that door is dry enough, so I can go ahead and go into this mixture again. I didn't even rinse my brush from the grey. I want this to be a little bit deeper. I'm going to add some alizarin crimson. There we go. Alrighty, now we can paint in. Where is this separation? I'm not going to add too much detail. There's a lot of detail on that. There we go. Very gently go about this wash. Just dance very softly over the paper. And here we've got two wooden slat bars that comes up like that. And I'm just going to talk a bit about this little separation. What shall we call it? Another architectural feature. I think that is good enough. Yes, I'm not going to add much more to that. Let's let that dry. Right. I think I'm going to start to mix the green. I've got some phthalo green that's dried here in this well that I can activate. Maybe add a bit more. I'm going to add, what have we got here? I think I'm going to add quinacridone gold deep to this green to just make it a little bit more earthy and break that viridian shine. That feels nice. Okay, let's begin to talk a little bit about these green leaves. So for this, I'm just going to basically sketch it in. I'm not going to try to paint actual leaves. I'm just going to represent it. I'm going to look at the shape and the form. We will begin there. This is going up. Here's another bush coming forward. So dab, dab, dab. There we go. Beautiful. Leaving some space in between the leaves as well. This is almost fully covered. Coming around here. Nice. This is going to come over this door, which is not completely dry yet. But it's okay if it bleeds a bit. It's going to be interesting. Here is also a branch just coming over. I just want this to look like it's supposed to be a puddle. I think it's best to let that dry completely, to be honest with you. I was too lazy and I don't mind the watercolor effects, but if you want a crisp, clean kind of vibe going there, you might have to let that dry. I'm going to pick up a little bit of Nico Azo Yellow, and just on the top of some of these greenery, I will add a little bit of this potent yellow to just punch a little bit of the leaves that is going to receive some sunlight. And I'm going to dig into the phthalo green and a little bit of phthalo blue. Let's cool this down. There we go. Let's look at the difference here. Much cooler, much greener. And let's go at the bottom of these leaves and talk a little bit about the shadows, dropping that in. And also here at the top where it will be a little bit more in shadow. I think that feels a little bit too much like one shape, so I'm just going to go ahead and break that up a little bit and just talk about green leaves. And I think I'm going to come in with a bit of Payne's Grey right at the top here. That feels good. Let's rinse. Okay, now I'm going to take this grey mixture and I'm going to add a little bit of that purpley sort of vibe to it. And there's some blue and green here as well. I want to sort of just have a bit of a neutral vibe because this needs to be darker. So I'm going to wash this entire bottom section and just create more depth. And that's going to soften some of those marks as well. Let's use this as a shadow color on this vine. Just bring in a bit of shadow there. Here it can also be a little bit darker. Fabulous. I think what we can do, if you have a situation like this where you feel like it's just a blob, you can just use your tissue and let's just maybe pick up some of that so it's not so intense everywhere. And we'll allow that to dry. And then when we come back, we can see where we need to bring final contrast layers into. It's fine details, it's line work, it's fine brush. And we'll take it from there. So I'll see you now. Welcome back, everyone. So now that it's dry, I'm just going to use my green and just talk a little bit about individual leaves. And I'm just using that dark green mixture that I made. Hello, Oliver. My doggy is wanting attention. Hello, my boy. Your brother's busy painting. Yes, I'm almost finished. Then I'll play with the ball. This is bringing a little bit more definition into this. And I'm not even looking at the reference material now. I'm just sort of making this my own. Final details is fun. It's small brush marks. It's usually a little bit more intense, and that's just helping to tell the story about the textures that you are and the shapes that you are painting. Beautiful. See what a lovely difference that final wash made to the stonework. We can go ahead and I'm going to use my fine liner here. And right underneath this plaster, I'm going to bring in a very strong, what do you call it, shadow, to just emphasize that this plasterwork is standing away. It's a thick layer of plaster, it's casting a shadow. Some areas is a little bit darker than others. And here and there, let's go ahead and very finely draw in some details about the stones. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and just draw in the details of this window door. emphasize the shadow under the shelf just a little bit. Hello, Lipsy. And I think that is good. Let's dive into a little bit of this ultramarine blue. That's maybe a bit much, Gideon. I just want to talk a little bit about the shadows of some of these leaves that will be cast on this window. And here and there, it might be a good idea to just talk a little bit about the, what should we call it, the branch, that it's actually connecting this whole structure. And I've learned to not draw a straight line, but to interrupt it. It looks more natural. And it talks about overlapping. I think overlapping is one of the secrets in art. That helps to just define what it is you're looking at. I'm going to emphasize the shadow. I'm going to rinse my brush, wipe it off, and I just want to soften that a little bit, talking about the cast shadow against the wall. I think that's good. And I think I'm done, actually. I'm going to go ahead and deepen the shadow a little bit more while it's wet. Just dance. And we will allow that to dry. I really think this is successful. So here we go. Now let's see if the paper is dry enough for me to remove the tape. Now remember to heat this up with your dryer to just let the glue release and make sure your painting is dry. Now with the fine details I just added, it's not the end of the world. There we go. Here's a good example of why it's always a good idea to just clad with a tissue. Where is my tool? Maybe I must come for this side. Oh, that's stuck down there, okay. Come now. That could have been a little bit drier, but it's okay. There we go. Now before that goes anywhere, I'm just gonna lift it up. I think I'm gonna dry that some more. That's not dry. Sorry for all the noise. that is off. Nice. I'm quite happy, and you can always come around with pen and ink if you really feel that you want to add more details to it. I quite like it just the way it is. And today is the 14th of the 7th, 2025. Dusty is the title. And I'm going to go ahead and sign it. Where shall we sign it? Over here, sign. There you go. Beautiful, and Dusty is done. I'll see you guys for the next painting. Enjoy watercolor. Bye bye for now.